Commander Elias Kane sat on a broken ridge of black stone, the heavy weight of his battle armor pressing against his tired body. For days, maybe weeks, he had lost count. He had not removed it. The exosuit was his shield, his weapon, his skin against the hostile air of this alien world. Without it, no human soldier lasted long, but tonight was different. The war had pushed him deep into enemy territory, cut off from his unit. He had fought ambushes, dodged patrols, and slept only in short bursts with one eye open. His body ached. His mind felt like it was drifting on the edge of exhaustion. The suit, though protective, felt like a prison. Its recycled air was stale. Its joints groaned every time he moved. The helmet narrowed his vision to a tunnel. For the first time since landing on this cursed planet, Kane thought about what it might feel like to be free of it, if only for a moment. The alien world stretched around him in eerie silence. Forests of twisted, glowing plants swayed under a pale violet sky. Great spore clouds floated above the treetops like drifting ghosts. Far away, the distant rumble of thunder rolled across the horizon. This was not a place for humans. The air was laced with toxins. The ground crawled with predators. And worst of all, alien patrols, swift, merciless hunters, searched for human stragglers. Yet Kane's spirit, though battered, was stubborn. Humanity had always found ways to survive where no other species dared. That was what made them dangerous. That was what made them human. His helmet display flashed a warning. Low oxygen reserves. He had used his backup tanks during the last fight. The air filters in his armor still worked, but they would not last forever. He needed rest. He needed air. He needed to feel human again. With slow, deliberate hands, Kane reached up and unlocked the seals of his helmet. The hiss of escaping pressure echoed in the night. For a heartbeat, fear clawed at him. What if the toxins burned his lungs? What if unseen spores invaded his blood? What if this was the end? But then fresh air, strange, sharp, and earthy, rushed over his face. It was not pure, but it did not kill him. His chest rose, his lungs filled, and he felt the night breeze brush across his skin. It was a small miracle. Kane removed the rest of his armor piece by piece. The chest plate fell with a metallic thud. The arm guard slid free. The heavy boots caked in alien mud were pulled away. For the first time in weeks, his body was free. He was only a man again, not a machine wrapped in steel. He sat there in his torn undersuit, bare hands pressed to the cold stone, staring up at the alien stars. His breathing slowed. His heartbeat steadied. He felt alive, fragile, and strangely at peace. But he was not alone. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light. A faint shimmer among the glowing plants. A soft shuffle of small feet across the ground. His instincts screamed at him to grab his weapon, to dive back into the shell of his armor. But something stopped him. From the shadows, a figure appeared. Small, thin, not armored, not armed. A child. Kane froze. The alien child was no taller than his waist, its skin pale blue under the strange sky. Large black eyes blinked at him without fear. Its hands clutched something round and glowing faintly, some kind of fruit. The child stepped closer, tilting its head, curious. Kane's mind raced. He had fought soldiers of this species before, ruthless, disciplined, merciless. But never had he seen one so young. The propaganda said their kind were all killers, born with hatred for humans. Yet here was a child standing before him with no weapon, no hate, only wonder. More shapes emerged from the glowing plants. 2, 3, 4 more children peeking from behind the stalks. They whispered in a language Kane could not understand. Their voices were soft, uncertain, but their eyes, wide and shining, looked not at the armor he had shed, but at him. Kane's throat tightened. He had faced death without flinching. He had fought machines of war larger than buildings. Yet the gaze of these alien children left him stunned. The first child stepped closer, lifting the glowing fruit with both hands. It was an offering. Kane hesitated. Was it poison, a trick, or simply kindness? His instincts, sharpened by war, told him to be cautious, but something deeper whispered otherwise. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and took the fruit. The surface was warm, soft, pulsing faintly as if alive. The child's face lit up. Was that a smile? Kane could not tell. But the gesture was clear. Peace. For the first time in months, Kane laughed. It was quiet, broken but real. He bit into the fruit. Sweet liquid burst across his tongue, strange but not unpleasant. The children clapped their small hands together, chattering excitedly. In that moment, Kane understood something the war had never taught him. These were not monsters. They were people. Children who should have been running through fields, not hiding in the ruins of war. He wiped juice from his chin and set the fruit aside. He wanted to speak, to tell them his name, to show them he meant no harm. He pointed at his chest. "Kane," he said slowly. "My name is Kane." The children tilted their heads, murmuring. Then one pointed at its own chest and made a soft sound. Another followed. Soon they were all saying names he could not pronounce, their voices like music. Kane smiled. For a moment the war faded. There were no battles, no orders, no enemies. Only a soldier and a group of children sharing a fragile connection under alien stars. But peace never lasted long in a war zone. From the distance came the unmistakable whine of engines. Kane's smile faded. The children froze. Alien patrols, soldiers. His instincts returned in a rush. He pulled his sidearm from his belt and scanned the tree line. He could not fight them, not without his armor, not while protecting the children. Yet he could not abandon them either. He turned to the small faces staring at him with trust and fear. They had offered him fruit. They had given him peace. Now he had to give them something back. "Hide," he whispered, gesturing toward the deeper shadows of the forest. "Go!" They hesitated, not fully understanding. Then the first child, the one who had offered him the fruit, grabbed the other's hands and led them away. Their small forms disappeared into the glowing plants. Kane stood alone on the ridge, sidearm ready, heart steady. He was unarmored, exposed, vulnerable. But he had made his choice. He would face whatever came. Not for victory, not for orders, but for the children who had seen him as more than a monster. The forest was alive with sound now. What had been peaceful moments before was broken by the hum of alien engines cutting through the night air. Commander Elias Kane crouched low on the ridge, his sidearm steady in his hand, his body bare of armor but alive with tension. The children were gone, hidden in the glowing underbrush where he prayed the patrol would not see them. His duty was clear: hold the enemy's attention no matter the cost. Through the shifting trees, beams of pale light cut across the darkness. Shadows moved. Voices barked in sharp tones. Kane did not know their language, but the anger in it was clear. They were hunting. They knew he was here. Kane's heart pounded, but his breathing stayed steady. He had lived too long as a soldier to panic now. His mind calculated distances, angles, the rhythm of footsteps. There were 5, maybe 6 patrol soldiers, moving in a spread formation. Each carried a long weapon that glowed faintly at the edges. Kane had faced them before. They were fast, disciplined, and merciless. He could kill 2, maybe 3 before they overwhelmed him. Without armor, without support, those odds meant death. But Kane was not thinking about survival anymore. He thought of the children's wide eyes, their trust. He thought of the fruit placed in his hands. He thought of the faint sound of names spoken like music. He had seen the truth hidden beneath years of propaganda. These aliens were not all soldiers, not all killers. They were families, children, lives caught in the fire of war. And so Kane did something his training never taught him. He lowered his weapon. Instead of opening fire, he waited. He wanted to see if there was another way. The patrol stepped into view. 6 figures, tall and armored, their eyes hidden behind helmets that glowed faintly with scanning lights. Their movements were sharp, precise. They swept their weapons across the forest, hunting for heat signatures, for motion. One soldier barked an order and the others spread out. Kane's muscles tightened. He was exposed on the ridge. If they spotted him, he would have no chance. Then, fate intervened. The first soldier turned, his scanning beam passing over Kane's position. For one brief moment, their eyes met. Human and alien, soldier and soldier. Kane felt the weight of that stare. The alien raised his weapon. Kane did not fire. He raised his empty hand slowly, palm open. A universal gesture: "I am not here to kill you." The alien hesitated. His weapon wavered. For a breathless second, the night held its breath. Then another soldier shouted, breaking the moment. The patrol tightened formation, weapons pointed directly at Kane. Orders snapped like whips. They were preparing to fire. Kane cursed under his breath. Peace was fragile. War was heavier. He rolled to cover behind a boulder as energy blasts scorched the stone where he had stood. The ridge exploded in light and sound. Kane's sidearm barked in response, short bursts of fire that cracked the night. He aimed not to kill but to disable, shooting at weapons, at armor joints, at the ground near their feet. Sparks flew. One soldier stumbled, another cursed in pain. They fired back, deadly beams searing through trees. Kane's mind screamed at him to kill them, to end the fight before it ended him. But he remembered the children watching from the shadows. If they saw him slaughter their kind, even soldiers, would they still believe in him? He fought with restraint, moving like a shadow, firing only when necessary. He ducked behind roots, rolled through glowing vines, shifted position again and again. He became a phantom in the forest, never where the enemy expected. Minutes felt like hours. Sweat dripped down his face. His lungs burned from the strange air. His sidearm's power gauge blinked low, and then as suddenly as it began, the fight paused. The patrol had regrouped, taking cover of their own. Kane crouched low, weapon pressed to his chest, listening. He heard them talking, sharp words exchanged in their alien tongue. But something in their tone had changed. Not anger, confusion. One soldier raised a hand, calling the others to hold fire. Slowly, he stepped out from cover. His weapon was lowered, not raised. Kane stiffened. What was this, a trick? The alien removed his helmet. For the first time, Kane saw the face of a soldier of this species without the mask of war. Pale skin, sharp features, dark eyes that glowed faintly in the violet night. Not so different, Kane thought, from the children who had given him fruit. The alien spoke. Kane did not understand the words, but the tone was not hostile. It was questioning, searching. Kane lowered his weapon slightly, though not completely. He pointed to himself. "Kane," he said slowly, the same way he had with the children. He touched his chest again. "Human." The alien tilted his head as if confused. Then he spoke again, tapping his chest. A single name. Kane did not catch it, but he knew its meaning. They were exchanging identities, soldier to soldier, human to alien. Kane's mind whirled. Could this be the start of something more? Could the lies told by governments, by generals, by propaganda be broken here, in the silence between enemies? But before anything more could happen, a sharp cry pierced the night. The children. Kane's blood ran cold. In their excitement or fear, they had made a sound. A high-pitched voice carried through the trees. The patrol turned sharply toward it. Weapons lifted. "No," Kane whispered. The alien who had stepped forward frowned, looking between Kane and the sound. His soldiers aimed into the brush. Kane's heart pounded. He could not let them find the children. He would not. With a shout, he raised his weapon and fired into the air, drawing their attention back to him. Energy blasts tore into the ground where he stood. He dove for cover, rolling hard, dirt and stone cutting into his skin. The fight erupted again, but Kane no longer cared about peace. Now he had to protect the children. He fired with precision, taking down 2 soldiers by blasting their weapons from their hands. Another fell when Kane struck his leg armor, sending him crashing to the ground. The alien without his helmet shouted something. An order, perhaps. The remaining soldiers hesitated. Kane stood tall, unarmored, chest heaving, weapon aimed. "You want me?" he shouted, though he knew they could not understand. "Not them." The helmetless alien stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly he lowered his weapon. He barked an order, and the other soldiers, hesitant, confused, did the same. The forest fell silent again. Kane did not lower his gun. He did not trust this sudden pause. But the helmetless alien stepped closer, his dark eyes fixed on Kane with something strange in them. Not hate, not anger, curiosity. The alien pointed toward the trees where the children hid, then back at Kane. His expression was unreadable, but his tone was softer now. Almost questioning, Kane realized the truth. They had seen him protect the children. They had seen him fight with restraint. They had seen something their propaganda had never told them. Humans could choose mercy. The alien turned, barked a final order, and the patrol withdrew into the shadows, leaving Kane standing alone. His weapon trembled in his hand, but his heart was steady. The children crept back from the underbrush, their wide eyes shining. They had seen it too. Kane dropped to one knee, lowering his weapon at last. He looked at the small faces gathered around him. "Safe," he whispered. "You're safe now." They did not understand his words, but they understood his tone. They rushed forward, surrounding him, their small hands tugging at his arms, his clothes. They were excited, relieved. One even laughed, a sound so pure it broke the weight in Kane's chest. For the first time, Kane felt the war shift. Not in battles won, but in hearts changed. The violet sky slowly faded into a deeper shade of night. Strange stars blinked above, and the twisted forest glowed softly with its living plants. Commander Elias Kane sat with his back against a stone pillar, surrounded by the alien children who had once feared him. They whispered among themselves, their large eyes fixed on him with trust that felt heavier than any burden he had carried in war. He was unarmored, vulnerable but no longer alone. The battle with the patrol was over. Against all odds, Kane had lived through it. He had expected the soldiers to kill him the moment they saw his face, yet instead, they had hesitated. They had left him alive, and the memory of that one alien, helmet off, curious, not cruel, stayed sharp in Kane's mind. It meant something. It meant the wall of lies between human and alien might not be unbreakable, but Kane also knew the danger had only grown. Patrols would return, and if the children's presence was discovered, the settlement nearby would face punishment. He had seen it before, civilians punished for showing mercy, innocents crushed so the war machine could keep turning. The children chattered and tugged at his arm, offering more glowing fruit. Kane smiled faintly and accepted. It was sweet, almost like honey, and though strange to his tongue, it gave him strength. He touched his chest again. "Kane," he said slowly. The children repeated the name with laughter, their voices echoing like bells. Then one of them, a girl perhaps, her features softer than the others, pointed at him and said something in their language. The others nodded eagerly. Kane could not understand, but he guessed what they were saying. "Human," he nodded. "Yes," he whispered. "Human." For a brief moment he let himself believe in peace, but peace shattered quickly. From the direction of the settlement, a heavy boom shook the ground. Fire lit the sky in the distance. Kane's head snapped toward it. His soldier's instincts screamed. That was artillery. That was destruction. The children froze, their small faces pale with fear. Another blast followed, and a faint glow of fire rose above the tree line. Kane's stomach turned cold. The purge had begun. He had seen it before. Alien commanders ordering their own people punished for showing humanity too much sympathy. The settlement was being wiped out to erase the shame of harboring weakness. Kane clenched his fists. He had no orders, no backup, no armor. He was one man against an army. But he also had something stronger than orders. He had choice. And he chose not to stand by. "Stay here," he told the children, gesturing for them to hide deeper in the glowing brush. His voice was firm, his eyes serious. They did not understand the words, but they understood the tone. They obeyed, slipping into the shadows. Kane grabbed his sidearm, checked its charge, low but workable, and began moving toward the fire. The closer he came, the worse the scene grew. The settlement was not a military outpost. It was a cluster of huts made from living wood and glowing vines, simple shelters for families. Now those huts burned, sending smoke into the night sky. Alien soldiers marched through the settlement in formation, setting fire to homes, dragging civilians out, shouting orders. Their weapons gleamed under the flames. Kane's teeth clenched. He could not unsee the faces of the children. He could not unhear their laughter. These were their families, their homes, destroyed not by humans but by their own kind. He crouched low, moving along the edge of the tree line. His soldier's mind analyzed everything: patrol routes, weapon placements, blind spots. He was trained for this, even if he was alone. Then he saw them. Villagers herded together in the square. Dozens of them, unarmed, surrounded by soldiers. Among them were the children's parents, perhaps, clutching one another in fear. A commander stood tall in the center, his armor darker than the rest, his voice harsh as he barked orders. Kane did not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. These people were condemned. Kane's hand tightened on his sidearm. He could run. He could hide. It was not his war, not his duty. But his heart knew the truth. If he walked away, the children would return to nothing but ashes. He would not allow it. He stepped from the shadows and fired. His first shot struck a soldier's weapon, sending it flying. His second hit the ground at the commander's feet, sparks scattering. The soldiers spun, shouting in shock. There he stood, unarmored, alone, a human in the middle of their purge. His weapon glowed faintly in his hand. His eyes burned with fire. The commander barked an order. Weapons swung toward him. Kane shouted back, though they could not understand. You'll have to go through me! The first volley came. Kane dove behind a burning hut, energy blasts scorching the air. He returned fire with precision, striking weapons, knocking soldiers to the ground. He moved like lightning, rolling, ducking, firing only when he had a clear shot. The villagers gasped, watching. For the first time, they saw a human fight not against them, but for them. Kane knew he could not win. Not alone, not against so many. But he did not need to win. He needed to show the truth, to break the image painted by propaganda. He shouted, pointing to the villagers. They are not your enemy. Neither am I. His words were lost, but his actions spoke louder. One soldier hesitated, weapon shaking. Another looked at the villagers, then at Kane. Doubt spread like cracks in stone. Kane pressed harder. He fought with restraint, disabling, not killing. Every choice he made shouted the truth. Humans were not monsters. The commander, enraged, charged forward with a blade of glowing energy. Kane barely dodged, the heat of the weapon searing his side. He rolled, grabbed a broken spear from the ground, and parried the next strike. Sparks flew. The villagers gasped again. A human with nothing but a stolen spear was standing against their armored commander. The duel was brutal. The commander swung with power. Kane countered with speed. His muscles screamed, his lungs burned, but he held his ground. Blow after blow clashed under the burning night. Finally, with a roar, Kane struck the commander's wrist. The glowing blade fell to the ground. Kane pointed his sidearm at the commander's chest but did not fire. He held. He chose mercy. The silence that followed was louder than any battle. Soldiers stared. Villagers stared. The commander himself froze, shame and fury twisting his face. Kane lowered his weapon and stepped back. He was saying without words, I will not kill you. I am not your monster. Something broke in that moment. One soldier dropped his weapon. Another followed. Soon half the patrol stood uncertain, weapons lowered, eyes shifting. The villagers murmured, hope rising in their voices. The commander shouted angrily, but his words no longer held power. His soldiers no longer believed. They had seen too much. Kane's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his face. He was weak, exhausted, but inside he felt stronger than ever. This was it, the turning point. The lies were breaking. The truth was spreading. A child's voice rang out. One of the children from before had followed, peeking from the crowd. She pointed at Kane and shouted his name. Kane! The villagers echoed it, voices trembling but rising. Kane, Kane! The soldiers froze. Their eyes shifted from the villagers to the human, unarmored, standing with mercy in his hands. Kane met their gaze. He said nothing. He did not need to. His actions had already spoken. The purge had failed. The violet night had deepened into near black. The alien settlement, once quiet and peaceful, now stood as a fragile fortress of glowing vines and charred wood. Commander Elias Kane crouched on the edge of the tree line, his sidearm ready, sweat stinging his eyes, muscles screaming from fatigue. The first clash had shifted the tide, but the enemy was not finished. The alien commander's pride had been wounded, and he would not let humans or villagers defy him. Kane glanced at the small faces hiding in the underbrush. The children had gathered their courage, whispering words he could not understand, but which he felt in his chest. Hope, determination, humanity. Stay low, Kane whispered. I'll keep them safe. A distant roar answered him. The enemy was coming, more soldiers, faster, angrier. Their lights carved paths through the forest, searching. Kane knew they could not hold the line alone. But if he failed, the villagers would die. He took a deep breath. Humanity had always thrived in impossible situations. They adapted. They survived. And he would show it here. Kane darted forward, his movements precise. Using every shadow, every tree, every glowing vine, he struck at soldiers with short bursts of energy from his sidearm. He disabled weapons, tripped patrols, and even knocked a few unconscious. Each shot was calculated, every move designed not to kill unnecessarily. He shouted when necessary, throwing off enemy timing, giving the villagers time to scramble to safer positions. Then he saw the children again. One girl had wandered too far, frozen in the open. A soldier aimed directly at her. Kane did not hesitate. He leapt, firing his sidearm mid-air, the energy bolt shattering the soldier's weapon. The girl screamed, ducked, and ran to safety. Kane's heart pounded. For every second of victory, another danger appeared. But the children were not just hiding anymore. Inspired by Cain, they began helping. Small hands threw stones, tripped wires, and signaled hidden traps Cain had instructed them to prepare. It was dangerous, but it worked. Cain's eyes scanned the battlefield. The alien soldiers were disciplined, but Cain was clever. He was human. He thought in ways the aliens did not expect. He moved with strategy, improvisation, and courage that no armor could give him. A patrol charged down the central path. Cain rolled forward, grabbed a fallen plank, and swung it like a lever, sending 2 soldiers stumbling into a shallow pit camouflaged by glowing vines. Another patrol hesitated, unsure what the human might do next. Cain's presence was unpredictable, and that unpredictability had become a weapon. Yet the alien commander was not idle. He rallied the remaining soldiers, their armor gleaming, their weapons deadly. He moved toward Cain with speed, fury in his eyes. Cain's muscles tensed. He could not avoid this confrontation. The fate of the settlement depended on him. The duel began. The commander swung a long energy blade, slicing the air with lethal precision. Cain dodged, rolling, using the shadows and uneven ground to his advantage. His sidearm barked, striking the commander's shield. Sparks flew, lighting the clearing like fireworks. Cain parried the next swing with a broken plank, the impact rattling his bones. He rolled again, striking the commander's armor at the joints. The commander snarled, surprised at the human's skill and daring. Cain had no armor, yet he fought as though he were armored in spirit. Behind him, villagers watched in awe. The human was fighting not for glory or orders, but for them. His courage was contagious. Some of the older villagers, once frozen in fear, began taking small actions, blocking paths, moving children, creating distractions. Cain felt hope swell inside him. Humans thrived when others doubted them. That was what made them special. That was what made him a force beyond the limits of armor or weapon. The commander pressed harder. Cain ducked, dodged, and struck. Sweat stung his eyes. Breathing was heavy. His muscles burned. But he did not falter. The battle had become more than survival, it was a lesson. A lesson in courage, ingenuity, and humanity. Cain feinted left, then spun, knocking the commander off balance. He ran, using vines as cover, his mind racing. The commander roared, chasing him through the forest. Meanwhile, the children were quietly following Cain's previous instructions. They had spread out, creating small diversions, tripping wires, and guiding villagers to safer zones. Cain's heart swelled with pride. Even in the face of fear, they showed ingenuity. Humanity's spirit was alive in them. Cain's sidearm hummed low. Energy reserves dwindled. He could not continue indefinitely. But he had one plan left, one desperate human idea. He ducked behind a massive stone outcrop and grabbed a cluster of glowing plants. Their bioluminescence was strong, casting bright light into the clearing. Cain threw the cluster into the path of the charging commander. The light exploded outward, blinding the soldiers, scattering them in confusion. He leapt from cover, aiming at weak points in their formation. Every shot was precise, every movement calculated, and as he struck, the villagers joined him, guiding their own traps and assisting in ways that Cain could not have imagined. The alien commander, finally regaining his senses, realized too late that the human was not alone. Cain's courage had inspired unity between species that had been enemies for generations. The soldiers hesitated, unsure of what to do when their own civilians acted against their orders. Cain lunged forward, seizing the commander's energy blade in a desperate grip. Sparks flew as he struggled, using every ounce of strength. Finally, with a well-aimed kick and twist, Cain sent the weapon flying into the darkness. The commander fell to his knees, panting, defeated, not by power but by the unarmored human who had shown him mercy and cunning. Cain did not strike. He only held his ground, breathing hard, eyes blazing. Around them, the soldiers stopped. They lowered their weapons, unsure. The villagers moved freely now, whispering to the soldiers, showing their fear, their trust in Cain. A hush fell over the clearing. Cain's chest rose and fell, sweat and grime covering him. His sidearm was empty, his body exhausted, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. The children ran forward, surrounding him, their small faces shining with relief and admiration. Cain knelt, gathering them close. He whispered words they could not understand, but the meaning was clear. "We are safe. You are safe." Even the alien commander watched in silence, understanding something fundamental in that moment. The human had fought not for domination, not for killing, but for life. The war may rage elsewhere, but here, humanity had proved its strength, not with weapons or armor, but with courage, ingenuity, and heart. Cain stood slowly, raising his hand to signal the villagers to move. "Follow me," he said firmly. His voice was rough, tired, but resolute. Together, human and alien civilians moved through the forest, away from the path of destruction, guided by one unarmored human soldier who had shown them that bravery and compassion could triumph even in the darkest night. The night sky glowed faintly behind them, stars witnessing the proof of a simple truth: humans could survive, adapt, and inspire hope in even the direst circumstances. Cain's choice, his humanity, had turned the tide, not just of this battle, but of hearts and minds. The first light of dawn crept across the alien forest, painting the twisted trees in soft violet and gold. Commander Elias Cain sat on a fallen log, breathing heavily. His body ached in every joint, every muscle screaming from the long night of battle. Sweat and grime coated him, and his sidearm was empty. But for the first time in weeks, he felt a quiet calm. Around him, the alien children stirred, stretching and whispering in their soft musical language. Their small faces were bright, curious, alive. They had survived. Their families had survived. And for that, Cain allowed himself to breathe fully, without fear pressing on his chest. The village they had fought to protect was still standing, though scarred by fire and smoke. Huts had been burned, pathways destroyed, and the forest smelled of ash and damp earth. Yet life had not been extinguished. The humans' presence, Cain realized, had changed something. The villagers were no longer passive, no longer helpless. They had seen courage in action. They had witnessed mercy, and they had learned to hope. Cain watched as the children ran between the huts, laughing softly. Some helped carry small bundles of belongings, learning quickly to cooperate. One girl paused, looking at Cain with wide eyes. She mimicked his breathing, as if trying to understand the strange human habits of survival. Cain smiled faintly, brushing the hair from his face. "You are safe," he whispered again, though they could not understand. The tone carried all the meaning they needed. The forest stirred with sound. Birds, or something like them, trilled softly. Tiny creatures scuttled among the vines. The night had brought death, but the morning had brought life. Cain's mind wandered to the alien commander, the one who had faced him in the clearing. He had not returned last night. Perhaps he had been humbled, perhaps he had fled. Cain did not know, but he suspected something profound had changed. Soldiers who had once followed orders without question now hesitated. Doubt had crept into their minds. The truth Cain had shown them, humanity could be brave and merciful at the same time, would not easily be forgotten. The villagers began emerging from their hiding places, cautious but curious. Mothers held children tightly. Fathers peeked from behind charred remains of walls. Cain rose slowly, brushing dust from his undersuit. He lifted his hand, a gesture of peace. Slowly the villagers approached. They had no weapons. They had no orders, only curiosity, relief, and trust. A man stepped forward, taller than the others, his dark blue skin marked by ash and soot. He bowed his head slightly. Cain could not understand his words, but the gesture spoke volumes. Gratitude, respect, recognition. Cain nodded. "You are safe now," he said again. His voice was rough but firm. He motioned to the children. "Go to your parents." The children ran, their small hands linking with their families. Laughter and soft cries of relief filled the air. Cain's chest tightened. He had seen countless battles, faced dozens of enemies, and survived by skill and cunning. But this, the moment of trust and life returned, was far more powerful than any weapon he had ever held. He walked among the villagers, observing quietly. He noticed the little things: a mother handing fruit to her children, a father repairing a bent frame of a hut, older children helping younger ones carry supplies. Humanity, Cain thought, was not just courage in battle. It was compassion, unity, and the will to protect life. In the distance, the forest shimmered as patrols retreated. Cain's eyes followed them, noting their confusion. He could see the marks of hesitation, doubt, and fear in their ranks. The commander's lesson had begun. Humans were not just flesh and bone. They were symbols of hope, ingenuity, and defiance against cruelty. A small voice called Cain's name. He turned. The girl who had first given him fruit stood alone, holding another glowing plant. She extended it to him carefully. Kane smiled and took it. "Thank you," he said softly. She mimicked his words, unsure of meaning but understanding the tone. Kane knelt, holding the plant between them, a bridge of trust between species. The alien children gathered around him. They did not fear him. They had seen his strength, his courage, his mercy. They had learned something essential. Humans could fight, yes, but they could also care. The lesson was more powerful than any soldier's training. It was life itself. Hours passed. Kane helped the villagers rebuild small sections of their settlement, teaching them ways to fortify their homes and protect each other. Simple techniques, barricades with fallen branches, early warning systems using small sound triggers, and safe paths through the forest. Each lesson was simple but life-saving. Each gesture reinforced the message. Humans did not take life without reason, and they would teach others to value life as fiercely as their own. As the sun rose fully, Kane stood on the highest ridge overlooking the settlement. Smoke drifted lazily upward from small fires still smoldering. But the village itself was alive with movement. Children laughed. Adults spoke in hurried tones. Life returned. And Kane felt a surge of pride, not in himself, but in humanity's ability to inspire courage in even the most unlikely hearts. The alien commander reappeared at the edge of the forest, flanked by remaining soldiers. He had come to see the results. Kane met his gaze calmly. The commander's posture was different. Less aggression, more contemplation. Kane did not move, but his presence spoke volumes. He had shown them mercy, bravery, and cleverness without the protection of armor. Humans were not invincible, but they were unpredictable, clever, and courageous. The commander stepped forward and nodded slightly. No words passed between them, yet the meaning was unmistakable. Respect had been earned. Perhaps understanding would follow. Kane turned back to the villagers. "You will rebuild," he said. "Stronger, smarter, together." A small cheer rose, not loud but full of hope. Kane smiled faintly. The war had not ended. There were still patrols, still dangers, still battles to come. But for now, this small corner of the universe had seen what humanity could be. Courage without cruelty, strength without oppression, compassion without weakness. The children approached Kane holding hands and small glowing plants. They mimicked him, copying his movements, and laughed softly. He knelt among them, joining in their play. For a moment, the horrors of war faded. There was only life, learning, and trust. Later, Kane walked among the adults. They asked questions, gestures, words, even hesitant attempts to speak his name. Kane responded with simple words, gestures, and patience. Each interaction built understanding, trust, and a bridge between species that had once been enemies. The sun rose higher. Birds, or their alien equivalents, sang in the trees. Kane looked out across the forest, the settlement, the children, and the adults who now moved with a spark of hope. He had shown them what humans were capable of. Not just weapons, not just armor, but hearts brave enough to risk everything for life and truth. He had removed his armor, faced the enemy, and in doing so revealed the soul of humanity. Kane finally sat down, exhaustion overtaking him but with a profound sense of peace. The children gathered around, resting against him, tired but safe. He allowed himself a small smile. They had survived, and so had the lesson. Wars could rage. Enemies could attack. But humans, humanity, had a spark that could not be extinguished. Courage, mercy, intelligence, and heart combined made them a force beyond mere weapons. They inspired trust, hope, and even enemies to reconsider their path. As Kane closed his eyes, letting the morning sun warm his face, he realized the truth. He had been stunned not by battle, not by danger, but by the power of showing life, compassion, and courage in its rawest form. The alien children looked at him, their large eyes shining. One whispered something that Kane could not understand, yet he felt it clearly. Respect, gratitude, recognition. And in that quiet, golden light of dawn, Commander Elias Kane knew humanity had left a mark. Not on the battlefield, not with fire or blood, but with the simple act of being human. Life survived. Trust survived. Hope survived. And somewhere deep in the forest, far from the reach of armor or armies, the first seeds of a new understanding had been planted. Humanity had not only survived, it had inspired.